What's going on, everybody? We are back. Episode number 177 of the Club and Sub podcast. Tonight we're chatting UFC St. Louis. Banger card here. Another one of these live events where they've kind of stacked the card up here. Josh saying, would I last longer in a ring with Lewis or in bed with Baby Shark? Certainly I would last longer in a ring with Derrick Lewis. I'd just run from him. I don't know if there's much you could do about that.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, we're coming off a pay-per-view that was interesting, to say the least. We'll recap that real quick. For me, on pre-bets, I was up 1.66 units. I cashed out Andre Pantoja. Yeah, I mean, more or less. I don't want to say it went exactly how I thought, but it was what I thought it would be. Had 2 units on Aldo, plus 139. That went great, obviously. And then I had half a unit on Anthony Smith, plus 400, which obviously also turned out quite well for me after giving it out on the show last week. The rest, now it's funny because those are the first 3 I'm reading, but prior to that, I had lost every bet and was down about 5 units. I then swept those last 3 to come out on top, which was nice. I had the under in Barbosa Carrasqueta, didn't go great. I don't even think it was a bad read, but it was what it was. And I had Carrasqueta 2-3 KO, which wasn't great. I had Jamie Malarkey for 1.5 units. All the narratives about Jamie Malarkey were exactly right. Dude just can't hang anymore. And I have Malarkey inside the distance. So, yeah, all in all, 1.66 units. Happy to profit. How did you do, Legs? I think you did pretty well, right?
Yeah, plus 2.85 units on my end. Had Aldo for a unit at plus 130. I played Burrito to win 1.5 units at minus 165. Thought that fight went more or less as expected as well there. Yeah. Only loss of the night was Borjas points handicap. I had the plus 3.5, minus 145. Not a great read there personally. And then I had a parlay with Orobai money line and the Ferrera Ehor fight to not start round 3 at minus 106 to win 1.5 units, and that came through as well.
All right, yeah. So profitable night for both of us. Couple good cards in a row, and we move into a cool card. Honestly,
yeah,
I have to dive into props a bit more on this before the weekend, but I have some action. I thought going into tape that I'd have a lot more action than I do, and I came out with less than I thought I would. But it's a fun card, and we'll get right into it. First fight of the night, we got JJ Aldrich. She's taking on Veronica Hardy. Current price on Hardy, minus 141. The comeback on Aldrich, plus 121. Any strong thoughts from you here, Lags?
Not really. I mean, I would only lean the JJ side just because I think her boxing is a little bit better, more composed over 15 minutes, and she's fought the better strength of schedule, but it's hard to not envision this fight being close either way. So I think it's just a close decision more often than not.
Yeah, this is one of the fights that I thought I'd be betting, and I'm ultimately passing on a pre-fight side. I was pretty sure I would bet not the Hardy side, I'm sorry, the Aldrich side here, just because I mean, JJ's obviously the more experienced fighter. She's fought better women. I think she's got tighter boxing than Veronica does. And I'd be a little surprised if either had much grappling success. But like when looking at it, JJ really, she's a nice boxer and a decent counter boxer, but she's got no pop. Her volume isn't great. She doesn't really separate from anyone. Like there aren't many fights in her career outside of the Na fight where she's really pulled away from any opponent. And conversely, on the other side, Hardy's got her issues, and I'm not like super bullish on Hardy's future because of the lack of a gas tank, because she doesn't pace herself particularly well. But with that being said, Hardy actually throws with, real heat while she's fresh, has a lot of speed to cover distance with, is actually like a real athlete, whereas I don't think JJ is much of one. And so like the early I expect most of the fight to be tight just because that's how JJ fights. But I think early on, Hardy's got a lot more speed and a lot more physicality than JJ does here. I just think she's got more upside in the first 5 to 7 minutes. Now, does that mean she'll win the first 5 to 7 minutes? Not necessarily. I just think she's likely to have more success than JJ is. And I also think in general, she's much more likely to finish than JJ is, which I don't think is very likely. But, when you're capping the fight, you have to keep that in mind. And so I'd rather just wait and see, what this looks like after a round. Like, is the pace high enough to gas Hardy out? Because as Josh just said, Hardy power. She does. I mean, her Instagram is all her just like training and like smashing weight. She seems very serious.
And she's got to chime in real quick, she's got pretty high IQ for a fighter too.
Yeah. And Dan Hardy is obviously her husband and her coach. And, obviously one of the reasons so many people bet Horth in her last fight was that Horth's physical, will push a pace and can gas her out. But JJ, she doesn't really push a pace, nor is she physical. So, yeah, I expect a close fight. I'd rather wait for live. Even if JJ has a good first round, I think you can probably get a decent live price just because I don't expect either one to separate hard from the other. And I just think Hardy has more upside early. So it's a pass for me. But I do think if you were like forced to pick a pre-fight side, that there's value on a little bit of value on the JJ side. Moving on, we got Jared Gooden. He is taking on Kevin Juet, the Frenchman living in Australia. Current price, Juet, pretty chalked up here, minus 225. The comeback on Gooden, plus 190. It's another one. I thought I'd be betting Gooden, and after taping it, I just feel as if Jared doesn't have. I shouldn't say he doesn't have. I think Jared's got plenty of ways to win this fight. And I'm not a big fan of Juet. For anybody that remembers, I bet Kenan Song pretty big against him. Obviously, not a great bet. I think Juet's game is pretty basic. It's kind of just like jab, check, hook, and then a lot of kicks. He doesn't really throw the right hand a whole lot. But what I do think he's good at, he feints really well. And his feints are good enough that he's very good at paralyzing guys into place where they just kind of stay in kicking range. And, he's good at getting that game off. And conversely, on the Gooden side, Gooden's a tough guy, decent grappler, decent power. Problem with Gooden is he's all over the place. His hands are at his sides constantly. He's got power and he'll throw strikes, but he's very, very easy to hit. And I do think he's the harder hitter than Juet, and that might be enough for him to get this done. Like, he could knock him out. And I do think if you can crash the pocket with Juet, he is there to be cracked, and he'll likely get KO'd at some point. But something I just couldn't look away from when I was taping it is I don't think Gooden has a great way to deal with the leg kicks he's gonna face. And that jab, check, hook. I mean, it's like if you told me Gooden was gonna fight with like his right hand on his face the entire fight, I'd be a bit more bullish. But he doesn't do that. He just bombs the pocket, and I just keep picturing in my head him just getting check hooked over and over and over again in this fight. Now, can he win that fight on moments or a KO? Sure. But I think Juet has a lot clearer paths to mounting effective offense than Gooden does here. Plus, I think he's got a lot more grappling upside than Gooden does. So, the line could be a tad wide, but I don't really have much interest in getting in. What do you think?
I'm actually going to target it from a prop perspective. And once the Juet round 3 decision comes out, which I'm hoping like minus 130, minus 140 range, personally, I think that's good. I just see Juet outworking him on the feet. Like you mentioned with the leg kicks, I think that's a big factor in the fight. And yeah, to me, Gooden's just got some power, has bad defense, not great cardio. All right, cardio, nothing special, but yeah, I think Juet just outworks him.
Yeah, I do too. I want to like Gooden. I just feel like his game is just very, very KO reliant against anybody decent,
Yeah.
So,
yep.
Moving on, Jake Hadley taking on Charles Johnson. Current price here. Hadley minus 141, the comeback on Johnson plus 121. I, of course, have gone back to the well with Charles Johnson here. Heavy unit and a half on him. I'll probably eventually bet his sub and sub 2-3 as well. I wouldn't say it's like the most passionate take I've ever had, but I don't want to say certain, but I have a fairly high degree of confidence that Jake Hadley is a fairly large fraud. I said it before he fought Cody Durden. I'm saying it again here. Go actually look at this guy's career in the UFC thus far. Outside of his finishes, the rounds he's finished in, he has won one round, including Contender Series and his UFC run. He lost the round to Mitch Proposo before he submitted him. He lost 30-27 to Nascimento. He lost 30-27 to Cody Durden. And him beating Carlos Candelario and Malcolm Gordon, like, who the fuck cares? You look at this guy's game, and he's a decent boxer, but his volume's not great. His guard is like so high, he is super open to hit to the body. And you see Durden exploit that in spades in his last fight. He's a grappler by trade, except he's a bad wrestler. And on bottom, he's just a guard player who can't get up. And now he's fighting a guy like Charles. And I mean, I can imagine Hadley outboxing him. I think he boxes with a little bit more physicality than Charles does. He just sits down on his shots more. Yeah, let's go, John Kelly. We got this. I think he has a little bit more physicality than Charles does there, but I don't think he's going to match Charles' pace over 15 minutes. I think many people look at Charles getting grappled by Mokaev, Estevam, and Durden. They're like, oh, Hadley can grapple him. Dude, Jake Hadley is not going to have much grappling success against Charles Johnson. Maybe he'll take him down, but he's not going to control him. And honestly, if he decides he's going to volume wrestle Charles, he's very, very likely to gas out. If anything, I actually think Charles has a much clearer path towards getting top time here than Jake does. Like, Charles can wrestle okay, and I actually think Charles is a pretty good submission grappler. He's never been subbed, and I actually think if he got on top of Jake, he can control him. So I look at it, and it's like the better athlete with better volume, with better cardio, who's got top time upside, who's also more experienced and beaten a better level of competition, is an underdog to Jake Hadley because for whatever reason, everybody watches Jake Hadley and wants to love him. Everybody bet this guy against Durden. People were laying the chalk against Nascimento. I don't get it at all. I get it. He throws decent heat and hits the body, but beyond that, I just don't think this guy's very, very good. He seems like a classic, Cage Warriors fraud, more or less. What do you think, Legs?
I won't disagree with anything on the Hadley side that you're saying, but to me, I'm just so done with Charles. And for me, it's the Ode fight. I mean, we talked about
and as John Kelly just said, we're in St. Louis, baby. You think they brought him over from Britain? They could have waited till the summer to put him on a card, but they're bringing him to St. Louis.
Very true. I just can't do it with Charles. I just let's fight slip away that really shouldn't. Again, the Ode fight to me was like a perfect stylistic matchup for him. And to your point, Hadley's not a great wrestler, and that's kind of what everybody's piecing together here. He, could wrestle Charles, but I just don't rate his wrestling game. I think he's better suited, honestly, just keep it standing. I think he could potentially outbox him, but I think it's probably a close fight either way, just not a Charles guy.
Fair enough. I totally get it. I struggled with should I go in pre or just wait live, and my view is I'm going to go in. I have 1.5 units on him now. I might increase to 2.5, but I'm trying to get in like half my exposure before and the other half and see like what the pace is at and go in live.
Yeah.
Moving on though. What'd you say?
I said, yeah, after round one, right?
Yeah. Moving on though, throw it to you, Lags. We got Trey Waters making his second UFC fight at -160, taking on Billy Goff, another prospect who's also making his second UFC fight. Come back on Goff +140. What are your thoughts here?
Interesting fight and probably one of the more fun fights on the card. I just kind of think Waters probably knocks him out early. I just think Goff is super hittable, and to try to implore his game, I should say, he's going to have to go through a lot of fire in that first round. I think Waters just probably knocks him out. But don't get me wrong, I think a Goff like pulling away late or finding a finish late wouldn't be surprising, but I just think Waters probably does find the chin.
Yeah, I haven't made a bet here yet, but I am considering strongly a Billy Goff bet. My big concern is kind of what you mentioned. Goff, I actually think he's got a good skill set. He's pretty high output, wrestles pretty aggressively, can chop calves, good cardio. But to your point, the guy has been hurt all over the place many times. Got hurt by Kinoshita, got hurt on Contender Series, got hurt multiple times regionally. Now, he hasn't been finished yet, and I think it speaks to his recoverability, but he does put himself in positions to get hurt in fights. Just the reality of the situation. And I am concerned about that here because your point, Waters is a sniper. He's very long. I think he's got 6 inches of height, if I'm not mistaken, and like 5 inches of reach here. He does counter very well, which is a concern. You saw Goff walking onto counters left and right against Kinoshita. But I think if you can get inside Waters' reach, there's a lot to exploit. I know his takedown D looked okay regionally, but something I noticed, the guys who did take him down all shot doubles, and he basically had no defense for it. His hips just looked... He doesn't seem to have like a down block and a sprawl. His hips seem very, very weak to me. So I think he is takedownable. The real question is, what are his hips like? Or not what are his hips like? What are his get-ups like? I don't really know because the only time I've seen him really flat on his back for an extended period of time was the Bone Fiend fight on Contenders. But that was weird because he got his arm trapped. He had a guillotine and got his hand stuck and got Von Flus. There was nothing to really do there, So I don't know what to put into it. I have my suspicions. I suspect he's probably okay, but I think Goff can likely get top time here. And in general, I trust Goff's work rate a bit more. I trust him to kind of come forward and do what he has to do. But yeah, I have the same concerns you do, obviously, which is that, he's going to eat some howitzers coming in. This is another one you could make a very strong argument for playing Goff live post around after Waters' sting comes off his shots a bit. But I don't know. I'm looking at the line. If it gets to plus 150, I'll probably go in small. I think Goff's fought a little bit better level of competition. And I just think that kind of, cardio pace that he brings is a bit more process driven and reliable than what Waters brings to the table. Moving on, though. Very interesting fight here. We got Tabitha Ricci. She is taking on Tecia Torres. The current price is Baby Shark minus 142. The comeback on Torres plus 122. I initially had bet Torres pretty big. I had 2.5 units on her plus 122. And then I was sitting there, and, Sunday mornings I usually dive in. I'll tape a couple fights here or there early, but I usually dive into the card a bit more aggressively on Sundays. And I was going through the card and going through, my bets and what I was thinking. And I came back to this fight briefly, and I was like, I thought about it, and then I thought about it some more. And, the reason I was okay with betting her off coming back from being pregnant is it does seem from her Insta like Torres is a fitness freak, trains constantly, in great shape, potentially on steroids. Like, she looks like she's back on the sauce. But the other side I can't ignore is the last 3 women to come off pregnancies. GDR, Nina Nunes, Julia Avila, all of whom in their first fight back looked horrendous, like so bad.
And most of them haven't fought again. Well, GDR fought recently, but the other 2 haven't really fought much.
Well, Nunes beat Calvillo after that. She came back.
Horrible fight.
Horrible fight. She looked terrible in that.
And she's been off for 2 years since then.
Right. And I'm not a narrative-driven guy, as you know, but let's be honest. Rocky's the champion right now. Who do you think? And I'm not trying. Look, I have 2 kids. I have all the respect in the world for her taking that time off and doing it. But let's be honest. One of these women is training full-time, just won a title. Who do you think is home taking care of the baby? Now, maybe it won't matter. Maybe Tecia bucks the trend, comes in shape. And if that's the case, I do think she has the tools to win this fight. She's a much better striker than Tabitha Ricci. I think she's stronger than Ricci is. And while I think Ricci can get takedowns, since Angela Hill got a couple, so did Brianna Van Buren, if Ticia's in prime form, I don't really think she's going to hold her down. I would make Torres about minus 150 if you told me she came back in the form she was in before she left. I have no confidence that's going to be the case. 2 years off, plus a baby, plus, maybe if she was 30, you wouldn't care as much, but she's 35 years old. So it's like she's getting older, big layoff, baby, loads of just feels like so much can go wrong for her here. I'd rather just pass on it and just see where she's at. But I do think if she's in the form that she's been in the past, she'll win this fight. What do you think?
I think the line's probably fine where it's at. Honestly, I think Ricci, to me, probably wins round 1 at a decent clip. And to your point with the takedowns, I think she probably can land like 2 to 3 takedowns. But again, I don't see a ton of control. So yeah, I think the line's more or less fine. I'm fine with passing.
Moving on. Another banger here. This one is, for as long as it lasts, should be fun. We got T-Rex, Terrence McKinney. He's taking on Esteban Ribovics. Ribovic's current price, minus 164. Comeback on McKinney, plus 144. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
So this is one, I know a lot of people will say, like, they want to take Ribovic's pre. I would honestly wait after a round. I think McKinney can have a ton of success both in the striking and mostly in the grappling here. I don't think Ribovic has great hips in general defending takedowns. I think McKinney could probably finish him in that first round. But, we know what McKinney does. He's likely going to fall off in that second and third round and probably get finished. But I think his early success is probably understated by most people this week.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Honestly, when the fight first got announced, I was contemplating betting McKinney. But then it's like you go back through the tape, and I knew what I was going to find. Like, I'm very familiar with Terrence McKinney's game. But also, the thing is, I don't even think it's a cardio issue with him. I don't. I honestly think it's a mental issue. You go back to the Sadikov fight, it seemed like to start around 2, he was fine. He wasn't breathing heavy, but it's like he gets taken down and you just see it, just quits. He doesn't, when things go against him, he just melts. That's just kind of how McKinney works. He's completely confidence-based fighter. Now, I don't think he's got great cardio either, but I think his biggest issue is that he's a confidence-based fighter, in addition to the fact that on the feet, he's got no defense at all. But I do think he can take Raboev down pretty easily early in this fight, or potentially KO him on the feet and potentially submit him on the mat. I actually even think there is some upside for McKinney backpacking him for 15 minutes in this fight. I just don't trust Terrence McKinney to not fuck up and collapse, for lack of a better word, if the fight extends. And like to your point, I actually think there's probably value on the Raboev line, but McKinney is going to get him down early and is going to take his back early if he doesn't get KO'd in the first exchange. I'm pretty confident.
Kirk almost subbed him last fight.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think McKinney's a better grappler than Kirk by a decent margin. So I just don't want to. I'd rather watch this fight play out at pace and lay minus 300 or minus 250 on Raboev live passed around than lay minus 160 before. Now, if the price keeps coming and it gets all the way down to like Rebo minus 125, sure, I'll dabble them, but I don't think that's going to happen. It seems we found resistance here. Yeah, I think Raboev is probably the money line side. I just don't really have any interest in betting someone who's likely going to be in a body triangle 90 seconds into this fight. So, yeah, happy to wait. Maybe bet it live, maybe pass. It should be a fun fight, though, but the pick's Raboev for me. Moving on, prelim headliner, we got Chase the Dream Hooper taking on Vyacheslav Borchev. Curious your thoughts here, Lags. Current price, we got Borchev minus 140, comeback on Hooper plus 120. What do you think?
Well, this is MMA Twitter's fight of the week, as pretty much everybody knows. And honestly, and I think for good reason, personally, because I see perfectly good arguments for both sides. Like on the Hooper side, while he may not need to land takedowns to win the fight, he scrambles so well to find himself in advantageous positions that if he's on top of Slava in this fight, I think he probably finishes him. But then conversely, I mean, his striking is absolutely atrocious. Yeah, obviously, if he's stuck on the feet, Slava's going to light him up. But the two guys who have grappled Slava dominantly, who are just massive physical specimens and much better, I would say, wrestlers, not grapplers, but wrestlers
yes,
in general.
It's not close.
Yes, than Hooper. No, I'm just differentiating the wrestler grappler, but yes, wrestlers. And so obviously Hooper is not in that same ballpark of physicality, so it's really tough. I mean, I see arguments for both sides. To me, though, I would rather lean on the Slava side just because I think Hooper's reckless, just way on the feet to try to close distance, try to get the grappling going. I think he's just going to find himself punished because Slava is is the best striker that he's fought and probably the hardest hitter. I mean, it's him and Steve. So,
yeah. I mean, Mike Davis and Mark Jacasey both skull fuck Chase Hooper, for being honest, very, very easily. So I wanted to bet Slava, and early in the week, I thought the line was going to flip. It seemed like there was a lot of Hooper's team, but it never did. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll bet Slava KO, but it's like plus 110. Like, fuck that, and I look at it at minus 140, and I don't know. I made Slava like minus 150, but his floor is so low here. If turns out Hooper can get takedowns, because if Hooper gets on top of him, he's very likely to violate him and has a large chance to finish this fight. The other side of that is, though, and the reason I kind of lean into the Slava fight, look, I've actually done really well on both of their fights. I bet Hooper big against Nick Fiore. I faded Slava with Mike Davis. I bet him big against Mahajate. I feel like the general assumption and the working thesis here is Slava is a bad grappler, therefore Chase will take him down. Whereas, you brought it up, the guys who have mostly dominated Slava wrestling are much better wrestlers and much better athletes than Chase is. I think Chase is not the kind of guy who can get pressured backwards and land takedowns. He doesn't have, the athleticism required to land reactive takedowns. Pepe said he hammered Hooper sub plus 400. That's honestly like really good. That's way better than his money line, in my opinion. But so Chase has two options here. He can bomb forward like he always does. But the truth is, to hit a takedown, you got to get in tight. And I don't know that he can, because if he does that, he's going to get countered really, really hard. And, you know, we saw in the Steve Garcia fight. Now, it's one fight, so I don't want to overstate that fight. But the first time he got cracked, he was suddenly on the back foot, and now he's sitting there and without any options and basically just got lit up and finished. And so I'm kind of like, Slava counters really well and really hard. Is Hooper really going to come after him like that? Because if he doesn't and he stands on the back foot here, he's going to get butchered and probably finish pretty quickly in this fight. Even if he does, it bears mentioning. Now, the fight was years ago, but, you know, Chase Hooper couldn't get down Peter Barrett, who's a terrible wrestler. Legitimately terrible wrestler. Had to bail himself out with a heel hook late in round 3. Couldn't get down Alex Caceras, who's not a good wrestler. He's not a terrible wrestler, but he's not a good wrestler either. I know Slava's been taken down left and right, but like even like to your point that Hooper can initiate scrambles, it's like Slava measures distance well. Is he going to? Rich says, I do like the Slava side. I'm just not laying 60% on him. Really, not that hard to kind of wrap your head around. If he goes for an Imanari roll, is he really going to tie Slava up? I doubt it. He could. I'm just saying, I feel like from a money line standpoint, the floor on Slava is very, very low if Hooper can get him down. But if he can't, he's fucking dead, you know? And this is the best striker he's fought by a very, very, very large margin. This isn't Nick Fior. It's not Peter Barrett. It's not Daniel Tamer. It's an actual guy who can measure distance and throw with intent and throw fiercely. So I lean Slava. It looks like the line kind of is closing a bit. I would probably bet Slava at -110, -115. Short of that, I'm pretty okay passing, though. Real quick, before we hop into the main card, just want to remind everybody, I still have to get the graphic updated, but we are brought to you by Fight Numbers. John Kelly's running a tight ship over there. The KO's +110. It's horrible. I looked at it. But at the end, like, we are brought to you by Fight Numbers, guys. And if you want a 25% off on your first purchase there, use the promo code CLUB. It's an incredible program over there. They got John Kelly running it. They got Ozzy, Pepe, Evan, and I believe Chad joined them over there doing the capping thing. Ton of great tools. They have a full live screen where you can see live odds on every single book, both domestic and overseas, which is better than anything FightOdds.io is offering or Best Fight Odds. You know, getting a live screen saves you a ton of time and allows you to hit, you know, the best prices across the board in the middle of fights. So, guys, check it out. Use the promo code CLUB for 25% off there. FightNumbers.com. That's where the money is. Moving on. We got Waldo Cortez Acosta. He is taking on Robelis Despain. Boy, did I get fucking cucked on this line. Current price on Despain, -240. Comeback on Acosta, +205. I bet Acosta at like +140 here. I'm going to probably add one more unit here because I just think this is crazy. I don't, if you guys want to go back and watch the breakdown I did on Despain against Josh Parisian, you're welcome to do so. I'm going to make it as simple as I can here. Robelis Despain has 5 pro fights. 4 of them came against fighters with 1 or less win. 4 of them have ended inside of 30 seconds. And the one that didn't, he basically got cage pressed for 4 minutes and then knocked the guy out in the last minute of round 1. This is a guy who comes from a Taekwondo background. He didn't start training MMA until 3 years ago. He's been vocal about being afraid to get knocked out, literally being afraid to get knocked out. And you look at his last fight, which apparently is where all the enthusiasm is coming from, how good he looked against Josh Parisian. It was a 19-second fight where the guy literally just went backwards in a straight line and like throwing wild counter hooks and clipped him. We basically learned nothing there. What we know about Despain is he hits hard and he's a Taekwondo guy. Not exactly the best base for MMA. He doesn't move his head much. We have a guy in Acosta who has 5 UFC fights. He's 4-1. He's going to come forward. He's got great cardio. He's got elite output. He's got a good jab. Yeah, he can get cracked. He's never been finished in the UFC, though. You know, his durability has looked actually really good in MMA. He did get finished twice in boxing, but he's a much more experienced MMA fighter. He's got 5 times the amount of UFC fights. He's fought way better competition and beaten way better competition. And if you want to go even a step further here and take it to the narrative side of things, Robelis Despain, he's this huge prospect the UFC is all jacked up for and feeding Waldo Acosta to him. Why are they sending him to St. Louis and fighting on the first card and the main card fight night to fight Waldo Acosta, who's from St. Louis and was in the Cardinals baseball organization? Like, is that what you would do with a guy who you think's the next Francis Ngannou? You give him a durable output cardio machine who's going to come after you for 15? I don't really think so. I think it's a really good matchup for Acosta here. If he survives the first, obviously I think Despain can crack him and put him down. But if he survives the opening minutes here, I think he's going to pace him really hard, likely finish him on the back end of this fight. I mean, look, I saw people betting, or he's not from St. Louis. He lived in St. Louis and was in the Cardinals minor league organization. But, I bet De Lima big against Acosta. Marcos De Lima at -120. Marcos De Lima, a guy with 25 UFC fights, who can wrestle, who can rip leg kicks, who's a serious Muay Thai background, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Tons of people like the Acosta side in that fight. And yet all I'm seeing, I posted I like Acosta, and all I'm getting is comments about how fucked he is, that this is a setup fight for the UFC. For a 35-year-old with 5 fights, I really don't think so. I think De Lima had way more to trouble him with. I think he hits probably commensurately hard to Despain. I know you people see the Despain KOs, but who cares if you knock out an 0-0 or an 0-1 fighter? Like, literally, what does that tell us? Not a whole lot. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think pick him to lean Acosta here. I'm going to probably add to my position. I think the people who are pimping Despain like he is the next Francis or some super prospect, I legitimately don't know what they're seeing. They're just people who were in love with round 1 KOs. So, yeah, it's Waldo for me. What do you think, Legs?
I'll keep it short and sweet, I guess. I kind of do think it probably is more or less a round 1 KO. And I think a better fight is probably... I don't think Waldo's got great defense, personally.
Okay, but I'm saying, why you're like, you think he's like Francis Ngannou?
No, I don't. I'm not one of those people that think he's Francis Ngannou. I just do think he hits fairly hard, and I think he's the large reach advantage. I do think he's just very dangerous in that first round here for Waldo.
Yeah, I just don't really see how anybody can. I'm saying I could see how you'd make an argument for KO, but I don't know how you could feel strongly that he's going to KO him other than just reading through general Twitter sentiment, which, as we know, is super predictive of what's going to happen. Anyway, moving on. We got Alex Caceras. What was that?
I said, I wish you luck, John.
We got Alex Caceras. He's taking out Sean Woodson. This is a really cool fight. Current price, we got Sean Woodson. He is at oh wow, he is taking money. He's at -220. The comeback on Caceras +185. What are your thoughts here?
This was one coming into tape. I thought I would be betting Caceras because I more or less thought it would be a close striking fight, but I think Woodson's much cleaner, honestly, on the feet. And I think I understand the steam, and I think Woodson's just a better striker on the feet. I don't think there's going to be much grappling at all involved. So should be a good fight for him.
Yeah, I mean, I lean that way. I was honestly hoping, because Caceras has been like a pretty popular betting underdog recently. I was kind of hoping it would come back into like Woodson -160, -170 range, but it didn't. And I'm obviously not betting Woodson at -220 without any grappling upside at all. Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he is the much harder hitter. He's obviously the taller, longer fighter. I mean, Caceras could do his outside kicky thing, but I mean, that's not a very impactful way to fight. And fighting like that against Woodson, who throws harder and throws in combination, seems like it's likely to lose in minutes. Biggest concern for me on the Woodson side would just be, Caceras, he is a fairly opportunistic finisher. He doesn't have much power, but you saw it in the Choi fight, and he's done that a bunch. He does a decent job of, kind of duck undering and taking backs. And I could see him doing that to Woodson here. Maybe even doing it twice and locking him down in a body lock. I could see that. I just feel like the hardware edge here favors Woodson to a large degree. So does the output. So does the boxing. So does the power. So I think the line where it is now is probably fine. I do think, and I'm curious in your take on this, Lags. As I just mentioned, I think Caceras is a reasonably opportunistic finisher. And while he hasn't been finished much himself, he has gotten hurt a bunch. Choi hurt him a bunch. Sadiq Youssef hurt him a fair amount. Giga hurt him. I feel like under +220 is like a gigantic number for two guys who are pretty high volume, where there should be some finishing opportunities. Like, what do you think?
So I've definitely been burned in the past on betting Caceras goes the distance. I mean, literally the Choi fight. I bet that goes the distance in that fight. I'm like, all right, this is looking fine. And then, oh shit. And yeah. Yeah, I mean, the under is interesting. I would probably more gravitate toward that way than anything. But I think it's more so priced that way just because Caceras in general, not a huge finisher, not a huge finishing threat. I think in this matchup in particular, it's more so a sub. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Moving on, we got cool fight here. Carlos Diego Ferrera, he's coming back off his knockout of Michael Johnson. He's taken on one of the best prospects in the UFC, Mateusz Rebecki. Current price, Rebecki minus 400. Comeback on Ferrera plus 300. I do think Rebecki's one of the better prospects in the division and probably in the organization. Obviously, he's got a very good process, good athlete, very good grappler, pretty decent top control, and obviously hits hard on the feet. But with that said, I kind of think this is a pretty tough fight for him. You know, CDF, I know he's 1-3 in his last 4, and I know he's 39, but this is a guy who kind of made a career off of out-grappling grapplers, getting back up and kind of beating them up. You know, he fought Rustam Khabilov. Khabilov couldn't control him, won a decision there. He lost to Gillespie, Dariush, and Gamrot, but none of them controlled him effectively. In the Gamrot fight, until he hurt his back, he actually looked like he was taking over the fight. You know, and you're talking about 3 guys. Like, he eventually broke against Gillespie under Gillespie's pace, but he mounted Gillespie in that fight. He hurt him bad and won the first round. And, you know, Gillespie, Dariush, and Gamrot, those are 3 of the best grapplers in, like, lightweight history who struggled to control him. And I think I would personally rate all of them as having, you know, better grappling in the aggregate than Rebecki does. So then it's like, well, how does the feet play out? He's 39. I didn't think he looked great against Michael Johnson last fight, but Michael Johnson is a very, very fast southpaw who's keeps his shots very straight, very good at getting in and out. He's got the same length as Diego. Just very, very hard for, you know, someone like Diego at his age to deal with, you know, with Johnson's speed and his kind of evasiveness. Rebecki's also a southpaw, but he's not nearly as refined in his striking. You know, his best offense is like big overhands, hooks, and leg kicks. Obviously vicious leg kicks, but I don't know, man. This guy's 5'7" with a 66-inch reach. He's given up 8 inches of reach and 3 inches of height here. I don't really think he's got very good defense on the feet. You know, he keeps his hands very low. You know, even Fior and Ruziboev landed a couple clean shots on him, and they are not anywhere near the level of Ferrera is. Ferrera can crack, and he will bite down and throw with you. I think he can fuck with Rebecki both on the ground and on the feet here, theoretically, if he's not totally washed. He throws heat. I think he can knock him out. I think he has the potential to out-grapple him in this fight. The real question is, and shout out to Pepe, who's in the chat. He pointed this out to me because I didn't even realize it. You know, Ferrera has had some issues making weight in the past, and so it's kind of something I want to watch, especially at 39, and make sure he's good on the scales. But if he is, I kind of think this is a no-brainer bet. You know, maybe he's done, but the guy still obviously throws heat. He obviously is one of the highest level black belts in the UFC. I just don't see how you want to say Rebecki's minus 200 because of the age, physicality. I can kind of agree with that. And I think I would agree with that. Minus 200 seems like a reasonable line to cap him with those things. But I can't get past that because if this was 4 years ago, I would favor CF outright. And it's not, obviously, but I don't know how any of these getting past minus 200. So I think there's probably some value on CDF here. And if he's okay on the scales, I'm going to bet him. What do you think, Lags?
I think the only other points I would add to that is I don't think Ferrera's got great cardio.
No, not the best.
So I think Rebecki probably could have success later in this fight just with controlling him. So, or again, finishing him on the feet with his wide power hooks and have solid leg kicks as well on the feet. So I more or less think Rebecki probably finishes him.
All right. Well, moving on. Another great fight here. We got Carlos Olberg. He's minus 270. He's taking on Alonzo Menifield, plus 230. Any thoughts here, Lags? You think it's right? Is it wide? Does Menifield have another upset up his sleeves?
He could have another upset up his sleeves. Personally, I was looking at the over 1.5 at minus 160, but also it's so tough to lay that when you have 2 guys that just don't defend strikes great. On the Olberg side, I think he could just play just more of an outside game because I don't think Menifield's striking is very deep. He's mostly just, again, looking to land big power. And if he doesn't hurt you, he's not winning rounds. I mean, the Jacoby fight's a perfect example. Jacoby was minus 400 in the 3rd round live until he got hurt. And he obviously got hurt in the 2nd round, gets hurt in the 3rd round, ends up losing the decision. But I think Jacoby was hurting him a ton. He was looking great on the feet, landing a ton of volume. And I think Olberg could probably do the same here and even finish him.
I was okay to pass. I'm still not sure if I'll bet it or not, but I will say, I'm starting to lean pretty significantly to the Menifield side at this current price. I tend to agree with you on the one hand, where it's like Jacoby looked like a big favorite, let's be honest, in that fight. He got knocked down and then he got hurt in round 3, and that's why he lost the fight, in a fight that he otherwise massively outvolumed Menifield. But I also like Jacoby's management of distance a bit better than I like Olberg's. I think he's a bit more seasoned as a kickboxer, and he's a bit more of an experienced fighter. He's had some more high-level work. Olberg really, to this point in his career, and look, I give him credit. Olberg's better than I thought he'd end up being after the Kennedy fight. But, I mean, let's just go through his last 5 fights. Fabio Charant, who cares? Stefan Nchukwi, also out of the UFC. Nikolai Negumereanu, also out of the UFC. Ihor Potieria, soon to be out of the UFC. And Daun Jung, who I think may also be out of the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, after that fight. The guy's just not fighting a high level of competition. And granted, Menifield's wins aren't great either. But I just bring that up to say that I think what Jacoby has done in the UFC, I think, is more significant and substantive than what we've seen from Olberg. And while I think Olberg, that loss to Kennedy was a product of him not knowing how to pace himself at all early on, and he's fixed that quite a bit, I still do think he's got some pretty big flaws. In particular, if you get inside on this guy, he's got no head movement. Like, if you can get inside of his reach, he's there to crack. And surprisingly, Menifield actually has the same reach as him. And I don't know if he's fought anybody that has the same reach as him thus far. So I kind of think it's an interesting fight, because I do favor Olberg to get volume off here. But I think Menifield can definitely have moments. It depends how proactive he's going to be. I don't think either has the best gas. I think there's maybe slight grappling equity on the Menifield side. Olberg's the more skilled fighter, no doubt, but you're starting to get up near 75% implied for a guy whose chin is maybe a little sus and who doesn't move his head much, taking on a pretty fast, explosive athlete.
And bad cardio, too, on the Olberg side.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you're getting up to a point now where, I mean, how does Olberg cover this number? Olberg is he's not gonna grapple fuck Menifield. I'm very certain of that. He's not gonna out-grapple. If anyone's gonna grapple the other, it's gonna be Menifield. He could play a volume kickboxing game on the outside. Is he covering minus 270 doing that? I mean, Fabio Charant hurt this guy. I really don't think so. I think we've gotten to the point where the line has kind of jumped the shark here. I'm not like bullish on Menifield at all. I tend to think Olberg's gonna win. But Menifield sub 30% implied, I'm kind of getting near, poking him here. I think Olberg, being from City Kickboxing and being kind of a flashy kickboxer, has probably got his stock overly inflated, especially off of finishing a bunch of lower tier fighters. And I think this is a pretty decent step up for him, to be honest, from what he's been fighting. So, yeah, I lean at the money line. I'll pick Olberg to win, but at the money line, I mean, it's got to be Menifield or pass. I don't know how anyone's laying, minus 260, minus 270 here. Moving on, though. Co-main event of the evening. We have got Numansa, Joaquin Buckley, taking on Nursultan Ruziboev. Money's coming in on Ruziboev now. Current price, Buckley minus 130. Comeback Ruziboev plus 110. I bet Buckley here, and I'm probably going to add a little bit more to the Buckley side. I just don't. I feel Ruziboev and his market love isn't coming from anything that like intellectually makes a ton of sense. Obviously, he's coming off 2 straight finishes, but I mean, the Bruno Ferrera fight, he got KO'd by the mat. He literally was like a caught kick and a strike into him going unconscious from his head hitting the mat. Into his next fight with Dumas, where I learned basically nothing from that fight. Dumas, I don't even think that he threw like 2 strikes in the round. Olberg landed a couple, or Ruziboev landed a couple strikes. Then I poked him by accident, and then Dumas just showed up, and that was the fight. And prior to that, Ruziboev's regional tape was really quite bad. I don't think he's a good wrestler at all. I think his defense is very, very suspect. I think his offense is fairly predictable for someone who's reasonable at making reads, as Buckley is. Yeah, like I look at it, and this is a guy in Ruziboev who kind of got a lucky meme knockout against Bruno Ferrera, and I poked his way to a win against Cedric Dumas. And now he's jumping up and taking on a top 15 170-pounder What's more is he fought at 185 2 months ago, and now he's going 15 pounds lower than that, which is pretty weird to me, in Buckley's hometown. And Buckley, I have some issues with Buckley, and I bet him a lot. I love Joaquin Buckley, but I think he can get cracked and finished. I think that's on the table. It's obviously happened before, but I don't think he's going to have a hard time reading Ruziboev. I kind of touched on, Ruziboev is predictable, and his shots are all like, he's not putting jabs or anything really in front of his power shots. They're kind of just out there for you to see. And so I don't think Buckley's going to have a hard time making those reads. Like, I expect him to be able to weather the early storm okay till Ruziboev gasses out and likely put it on him late. I think if he wants it, he can probably grapple here. I've seen folks talk about Ruziboev's guard, but if you actually look at the submissions he attempts, they're all like Kimuras and stuff. Like, he's not going to Kimura Buckley. I'm like very, very confident in that. So yeah, I just kind of think Buckley's better everywhere. The best argument for Ruziboev is he's just explosive and can finish anybody early. And I mean, that's an argument for him to not be like plus 200, but I don't think it's an argument for him to be getting near Pick'em here. Give me the more experience, give me the guy who's fought much high level fight, my God, I can't speak. Much more high level fighters and who's ranked in the top 15 against the guy who's kind of memed 2 wins here. I'll take Buckley here. What do you think, Lex?
We talked about this fight offline, and to be honest, I'm probably going to end up betting a Buckley myself, because Ruziboev, no doubt, is a fraud. Like, 30 of his 34 wins have been under a round and a half. Most of those have been absolute trash cans. The guy's got bad cardio, bad defense, like you touched on, pretty much all offense. And while Buckley, I think, has a suspect chin, and that's kind of what we were talking about offline a bit, he definitely can get cracked, and I just have a weird vibe with him getting cracked in the first round here. It's hard not to favor him with the wrestling, with the cardio. Again, fighting a much higher level of competition. Anything under minus 130 for Buckley just seems like a very easy click now.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I initially bet him at minus 150, and I'm like, the line's going to blow out here. Like, this is – but it's just weird, man. I don't – or maybe not weird, but it does feel like even – I know the MMA market tends to massively overreact sometimes, and swing, but, like, not usually against someone like Buckley, who's a literally top 10 to 15 guy, with someone whose best win is meme against Bruno Ferrera and Cedricus Dumas. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Last thing I was going to chime in there was I honestly think they would have overrated Buckley's line a little bit more off the last fight with Luque. Now, obviously, Luque looked like a shell of himself, and there's no doubt, and I get maybe that's why it's not inflated a bit more, but like Vicente Luque, again, proven top 15, 20, 25 guy, like.
Do you want to know why I'm not full sending Buckley? It's literally because I bet Luque last fight. I hate betting against someone and then backing them on their next fight. It's just not. I mean, granted, everything is style dependent, right? That's kind of changes, but from a market standpoint, it's not a great way to approach markets to look to fade someone and then look to back them. But this is just. Luque was. I bet Luque because this is a guy who was top 5 to 10 for years. Buckley's not fighting another guy like that. He's fighting a dude who was plus 200 to Bruno Ferrera 6 months ago. So,
and on top of that too, it's not like Buckley's coming off of massive chin worries or red flags where we'd be looking at it oh, do I want to lay this price tag? He just got knocked out in his last fight type of thing. Don't have that scenario here at all. Yeah,
and he gave Imavov's if Imavov doesn't mount him in round 2, he probably wins that fight. He gave him serious fits, and I'd make Imavov a large favorite against Ruziboev, So
agreed. Yep.
Yeah, I think Buckley should roll, but we'll see. I mean, obviously he could get knocked out. Moving on though, the main event, another Black Beast main event. Lags, would you say, why do you think they keep doing this to us? Does anybody that personally get excited about Derrick Lewis main events?
I'm going to be honest with you. Even I have a ton of casual fans that watch UFC, and they don't even watch it for the pay-per-view. For instance, last week, not watching it. No, they're not watching. They're literally watching for the top guys. But even a Derrick Lewis, who's been around for so long, the knockouts are so viral, nobody cares.
Kristen gets excited.
Not many people get excited. I'm sorry. I don't. Man,
There's got to be.
I think the problem is for me, it's just because I know the fight more often than not is not going 5 rounds. So it's just an absolute waste of time.
There's got to be some algorithm that tells them people want to watch it. Like, do you remember we had Gaziev Rosenstruck like a couple months ago, and
that's a bad.
I mean, that was awful. It was like who was making these? Meanwhile, you see the main event from last weekend, Pantoja Urseg, and like those are the kind of showcases the flyweights and bantamweights put on all the time. Like if you're a real MMA fan, like that's what I want to see, like a 5-round back and forth war. I don't want to see
like I would rather see Buckley and Ruziboev go 5.
Yeah, same. That's a way more interesting fight. But anyway, we should probably talk about the fight. So I'll throw it to you first here. Current price on the Black Beast, minus 161. Comeback on Rodrigo Nascimento, plus 141. What are your thoughts here?
It's not a passionate take, but I like Lewis here in this spot. I bet him at minus 155, and for me, it comes down to the fact that I don't think Nascimento is a great wrestler at all. And I've been betting on wrestlers to wrestle Derrick Lewis and much better wrestlers, in fact, like Curtis Blades. We both have bet him in that spot. And for me to say that this fight should be competitively lined, and the upside is for Nascimento is he's going to wrestle Lewis. He's going to wrestle Lewis. I don't think this fat tub of lard, personally, is going to have easy times getting Lewis down. I mean, you see, even in the Bozer fight, he's on both knees trying to get him down. And that's his most impressive grappling performance to date, which was a close, sweaty fight, was a split decision. I get Nascimento could hurt him on the feet. He's got some good straight 1-2s, but I think on the feet, it's all Lewis. So I like Lewis here in the spot for the unit.
Okay, so I'm going to give the opposite take here. But first, I'll start with the narrative take. The Derrick Lewis Narrative Nation take here is Derrick Lewis, he's coming off a loss. They like main eventing him clearly to the point that we just had. And my gut instinct is they'd really like to get him another main event KO so they can somehow justify making him fight Curtis Blades in a main event again. And either finish the Curtis Blades hype train or give a good reason for people to want to watch Curtis Blades fight for a title. Other than that, I feel like I've had to sneeze for like 10 minutes. I'm like dying right now. I would say, I guess my issue is, on the one hand, Jesus Christ,
Bless
there
you.
it is.
There you go. Well,
Thank you.
While you do that, I'll chime in real quick. The other Narrative Nation in this fight, Nascimento. I mean, we were just in Brazil. If you want to put Nascimento over a big heavyweight name and Derrick Lewis, why are we not putting him on the main card in Brazil? I'll end my narrative.
That is a good point. I will say, so my initial instinct was I think I want to bet Lewis here because I kind of disagree with you to a degree. Like, I agree Nascimento is not an elite wrestler, but I mean, he can get takedowns here, like, no doubt. Like, Derrick Lewis is a terrible defensive wrestler. But, my initial thoughts were he can get takedowns, but like, is he more likely than anybody else to stop Lewis from just doing his Derrick Lewis, I'm just going to stand up thing? Not really. And if that's the case, then like, surely you have to favor, the kind of power that comes with Derrick Lewis against a guy like Nascimento, who doesn't have the best defense in the world. The more I've thought about it, and I haven't 100% decided if I'll bet Nascimento yet, but that's kind of the direction I'm leaning. I just keep thinking, Lewis always has a high floor because of the power that comes with his game. But, I mean, he's 39 years old. He's got a bad back. He's a bad grappler. He's got bad cardio. He's pretty fragile, both to the head, the body, and the legs. Like, his floor is high, but is his ceiling high? Like, can his ceiling really be much past minus 160? Like, is Derrick Lewis knocking him out 60% of the time? I kind of feel like that's his, like, ultimate ceiling here. Whereas with Nascimento, I don't even, like, disagree with a lot of the takes you had, except he's 8 years younger. He's 31. He's at 8, which is very young for a heavyweight. He's at ATT, so, and he usually has a good game plan in most of his fights. So he's going to have a good game plan. He's got leg kick upside. He's there to kill. But if he comes out and swings with Lewis, I mean, I favor Lewis in that fight, but I don't really trust Lewis to take a couple flush shots on the chin either, So it's like, I think he could win that fight. I think Almeida not subbing Lewis is making folks think Lewis is unsubbable. I actually have a theory about that fight. And now, again, it's just a theory. I could be wrong. But you'll notice that, like, Almeida throughout his career, almost all of his subs are by rear naked choke. And I don't think that's an accident. I think he likes to sub from the back. I don't think he has much of a sub game from top position. And I think you kind of saw that play out against Blades. Like, he had no interest in even trying to get to the top position. He kind of just kept trying to get to the back. But I just don't think his legs were long enough to really lock down a hard body triangle on Lewis. So he just kind of beat him up from top position for most of that fight. And I say this because you flash back to the Spivak fight, and as soon as Spivak consolidated a takedown on top, he got an easy rear naked choke there. Or not rear naked choke, arm triangle choke there. And I keep thinking, like, if Nascimento gets this guy down and he's pretty heavy on top, and if he gets to mount, he might arm triangling him really easy. On top of which, when you factor in Lewis's age, it's like, dude, this guy's got health problems. His ass could fall out at any moment and him just look gigantic dog and be washed. So while I understand the take and I would favor Lewis, I just feel like at the price, like there's a fair amount of upside on the Nascimento side here, whereas I don't really see a ton of upside past Lewis's current price personally. Like, I think if we were to turn, like, if Lewis wins on Saturday, it's very likely going to be, oh, you know, Derrick Lewis did Derrick Lewis things. Either a quick knockout or he gets taken down a bunch, stands up, and eventually knocks him out. But, like, that's like, we kind of know how it's going to play out. Whereas there's probably iterations of this fight where Nascimento just buries him, just puts him in the ground and just beats the shit out of him. Is it likely? I don't know, but I think it is. I think if you were to like make a distribution of what their true price could be, Nascimento's would be wider than what Lewis's is, just given Lewis's age, grappling deficiencies, fragility, health, etc. So I know that's I said a lot of words there, but I feel there's more upside for Nascimento. I think there's more improvement upside. I think he has some real tools that can bother Lewis. I mean, fuck, we saw Lewis get finished out in the clinch by Tai Tuivasa not very long ago, and Nascimento is pretty good at clinch striking. So, yeah, I lean the Nascimento side here. I think the body kicks will be there if he wants them. I think the head kicks might be. I might bet it. I haven't decided. I'm still monitoring this line, but that's my pick here.
Whole lot of words, no bet, John.
I might bet him. I'm leaning that way.
I'm just fucking with you. I'm just fucking with you.
Fucking Christ. Now I got Rich in the chat telling me to bet, and I got you, and I got my co-host telling me no bet.
John, shot bet. Shot bet.
You want to do a shot bet? I'll do a shot bet.
Yes, sir.
But I can't do
you bet it.
two.
If you bet Nascimento money line, if you end up betting it, we will do it.
No, I want to do the shot bet either way. I'm fine with that.
All right.
We'll do a shot bet right before. Oh, here's one. I'll put a tweet out, or I'll have Lags put a tweet out from the official account. If Nascimento subs Derrick Lewis, I will give out $250 to someone who tags us, tags Club and Sub Todd, and retweets Lags' tweet next week on the show live. But you got to be doing all that, and you got to be following. So, Nascimento sub. The last one hit. It was Adolfo Vieira. But yeah, that'll do it for the show, guys. Hope everybody had a good time out here. Good luck on your bets this weekend. As usual, you can follow me, John, and MMA Fox, Lags at Danny_Lags. I hope you're following us. If you're fading us, I hope you lose. But otherwise, guys, good luck. We'll be back here, 7 p.m. Eastern. I think we have a card next week. We do have a card next week, 7 p.m. Eastern to chat UFC Vegas 92, I think. Take it easy, guys. God bless. Peace.